Hear me? There we are. Awesome. Oh my goodness, guys. I just want to start off and just say thank you so much. The last, 2 days and today 3 days have been amazing. You guys are so wonderful and welcoming to me, my wife, and son today, and it has truly been a blessing for us to be here, and I just want to thank you guys. I also forgot to say something in the last session, so if you're in there and talking about why God allows evil, I forgot one of my main points. When I brought up the idea of the injections, right, the vaccines, one thing that we keep in mind is when talking about is all pain evil, there are sometimes we go through pains because there's a greater good, right, in mind. And this became very real when Lennox, our son, was born, and I had to hold him down on the table as the doctor shoved needles into his legs, and he screamed and cried. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, right? And if he could have thoughts, his thoughts might have been like, Dad, why are you allowing this pain in my life right now? If you're a good dad, you would stop it. And it's part of it's like, you don't understand, right? This is for your good. And so I think there's something similar. I don't know if I need to switch mics, but between us and God, except for the gap in knowledge is far greater, right? Where what God knows is ultimately for our good compared to what we perceive in our limited mind. Now, that does change, I think, how we interact with others, where I wouldn't necessarily tell someone, well, there is a greater good, and there may be, that's maybe not the most satisfying thing, but do I need to switch? Yep, all right. Own ministry called Think Well. And so we've kind of talked about that. So I've been doing apologetics and speaking and podcasting for a long time, but Think Well, our own ministry, just launched this Tuesday. So it's less than a week old. So you're my first speaking event since the launch of that. And so thank you. So it's exciting for us. And so kind of as I move on, again, my hope is always to stay connected with you and wanting to provide resources and content for you. And I've tried to do that through the resource page, but there's other interviews that are coming up in the future. There's 5 interviews in July while I'm home that are going to be really fun and I think helpful on cultural engagement and understanding different issues and answering difficult questions. And so I just want to continue to be that resource. So if you want to come along and kind of follow the ministry, again, the contact page will come up at the end with the website, think-well.org, and all of that information, as well as if you would love, we would love it if you would come alongside us in prayer. As I've mentioned in previous nights, we are heading straight from here to LAX. We have a 6 o'clock flight to Utah, where we will be spending the next week until Saturday of next week training 34 students on evangelism and Christian theology and going door to door, talking to Mormons and students at BYU and engaging in those conversations. And so if you want to come alongside in prayer for Lennox's first plane flight and that goes well and we think we packed everything we had to pack, and just that, in that week of ministry that people will come to know the true gospel of Jesus Christ, it would just mean a lot to us. And so this morning, I want to try to go quickly so we can have some time for some final Q&A here at the end. But we get a fun talk of how do we understand as Christians this culture of entertainment we live in. Right? Again, it's not hard to know that you just hop on your phone, you open up your TV, and there are apps, and there are streaming services, and there are movies, and there are commercials, and there's billboards, and there's everything trying to get you to see or understand, or ideas that they're trying to impress upon you, and movies that they want you to watch, and songs that they want you to listen to. And often if we don't talk about it like all the other issues, then we start to think, well, maybe Christianity doesn't necessarily have something to speak into this about. Now, one common way in which we talk about this is what I call the line approach. When it comes to movies and music, we create this line, and on one side of the line we have the good stuff, and on the other side of the line we have bad. And then we kind of determine what are bad things. And so if there's a movie or a song that has cursing or blood or violence or witchcraft or evil or magic, those are bad things. And then on the other side, then that would mean on the good side is nature, Jesus, the Bible. If it talks about this, these are good, right? And I kind of experienced this a little bit in my family growing up where we had Disney movies taken away because there's witchcraft or sorcery in it. It's that's bad, just take it away. But hey, if it was about nature, you can watch it sort of thing. And what we sometimes do is we create this line. Now, please don't get me wrong. There are absolutely things that should go on the bad side of the line that we need to stay away from. But what we've done is we kind of create this line between what are good and bad, and then we switch it and we say it's not just good and bad, but these are Christian and these are secular. And then it's like, hey, students, stay away from all secular things. Don't listen to secular music. Don't watch secular movies. We just need to listen to Christian music and watch Christian movies. And I want to push against this narrative just a little bit. And I want to present another option to you. And it goes something like this. Whether you're listening to something that is Christian or secular, watching something that is Christian labeled or non-Christian, the focus is on this, three things: truth, goodness, and beauty. Is what it's saying is true, or is it filled with lies? Is it good versus bad? And is it beautiful versus ugly? So I think when you look at this approach, there are secular-made movies, Hollywood-made movies that are filled with truth, goodness, and beauty. They're filled with Christian themes, although they're not labeled Christian. And they can cause us to think deeper about life and reflect on things like that God wants us to reflect on. And sadly, there are some things labeled as Christian that I don't think are very good, beautiful, and sometimes have false ideas in them. I think sometimes the label can deceive us where we just say Christian and then we turn off our brain and we just absorb it, not realizing maybe we're absorbing something that's incorrect when we still need to have our mind turned on. You see, Scripture speaks into this as well, of focusing on things that are true, good, and beautiful. In Philippians 4:8, right, where Paul writes, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's anything excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about those things. Well, I think what Scripture is calling us to as Christians in this day and age is to think about things that are good, right? To have our minds consumed by things that are true, good, and beautiful. Right, as I mentioned that today I'm flying out to Utah it's a Maven immersive experience. So I also work for an organization called Maven that we've talked about. And Maven's thing is creating students that pursue truth, that know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty. It's kind of the slogan: know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty. So here's what Scripture calls us to do in our lives, and I think in what we can apply this to entertainment. Now, I think that there's also a movie that reflects this idea very well. So obviously, if we're going to talk about entertainment, I got to show you some entertainment. So here's the first movie clip. I want you to think about, how does this clip reflect this idea of thinking about things that are true, good, and beautiful? Here we go. All right, now in this clip, who loves food? Remy or his brother who just eats? Clearly it's Remy, right? How do you know he loves food? His brother's the fat one. His brother's the one that's just like, give me more, give me more. But you say Remy loves food. Why? He appreciates it and he wants good food. He's not satisfied with the trash. He's not satisfied with the junk. He wants good things, right? And notice this. You don't have to tell Remy, don't eat trash, right? I want you to kind of apply the idea of entertainment to someone like a foodie, right? You don't have to tell foodies, don't eat garbage, right? Don't eat horrible things that are bad for you, because guess what? They don't want it. Right? People who truly love food have developed a taste and want good food. And so to come along and say, hey, stop eating bad stuff. They're like, I don't want bad stuff. I want the good stuff. Right? You don't have to tell them to stop going to McDonald's every single day or something like that. They want the good stuff. So the question becomes with us is it possible that we have developed a taste for bad entertainment? Maybe like Remy's brother doesn't care or develops a taste for bad stuff and just consumes and does not realize what he's putting into his body and it's making him unhealthy. Is it possible that we are consuming the movies and music that we listen to and it's making us unhealthy, but we don't realize it because it's not a physical effect that we see with food? But from a Christian view, the physical is temporary, right? Our soul, our spirit is eternal. Isn't it true that the ideas that come into our souls are often more important than the physical food that sometimes comes into our body? How do we become people that are not just, I can't have that or I shouldn't have that, but actually develop a desire for that which is good? Now you might ask, but isn't beauty just in the eye of the beholder? Isn't it all just relative? This goes back to one of our other sessions. I think this is a lie of the relativistic culture, that there is no such thing as good and bad when it comes to entertainment, because it's not part of the hard sciences. But that's not true. Let me just give you one clear example. Here's a beautiful scenery of a mountain and a lake. Here's another picture of a dirty, gross alley. Couldn't you say? I think you can. It's true that the top picture is objectively beautiful and the bottom one is objectively ugly. That is ugly. It's filled with trash and garbage. This one is beautiful. Now, there are some things that are hard to tell the difference between, like here you have two beautiful things. So there might be a difficult middle ground of knowing where the line is between beautiful and ugly, but I think that we can look at extreme examples and say there is an example of something that is beautiful and here's an example of something that is ugly. And here's the first point. Here's the first take home. Be careful that we do not develop a desire for ugly. If we're not careful, we can develop a taste for lies. We can develop a taste for sin. We can develop a taste for ugliness. We can develop a taste for badness. If we're not careful, and we start thinking, this is good, I like it. And you say, but I like this movie, I like this music. Well, you like bad things. How do we reshape our minds and our desires to where we have a desire for things that are true, good, and beautiful? You see, in our secular world that we live in, right, the effect of the fall in our world is for people to say there is nothing truly beautiful. It's all subjective. That's because of the brokenness of the world that we live in. From a Christian view, God, who created us in his image, he is the source of objective beauty. And God has created a beautiful world, as we talked about already as well. In Genesis, it talked about that the trees grew out of the ground that were pleasant to the sight and good for food. God did not have to create them to be pleasant to the sight, but he did. He created this beautiful world. Therefore, the things that we create that line up with who God is and how God has created are objectively beautiful. Things that are filled with lies, ugliness, and badness are objectively bad. So when we look at this, what we have to recognize is there's some definitions that we have to understand. Right? Entertainment, what we're talking about is any activity that is designed to hold your interest, to hold your attention. On the flip side, we have what's amusement. I think this is the broken aspect of entertainment culture, is when it turns into amusement. Amusement is entertainment without inspiring thoughts. This is where you're at home and you turn your brain off and you just consume. And you don't think about what you're watching. You don't think about what you're listening to. It just becomes amusement. I just consume it. And amusement feels good. Maybe it gives us some rest and some things like that. We just want to veg out. But if we're not allowing it to inspire thought, if we're not thinking about what we're consuming, it's possible it's affecting us in negative ways. Now, there are some lies in our culture, and you might go, okay, but hold on a second. But relax, Ryan. It's just entertainment. It's just entertainment. It's not a big deal. Well, I would say it's not just entertainment. That those who are producing and creating this content know it's not just entertainment. They know what it's doing to you. Let me give you an example of actually the night before. I think it was the night before I was going to give this talk one time at a summer camp. I was on YouTube, and this commercial came on YouTube the night before I was going to give this talk, and I was like, that's perfect. It's going in my talk. Here it is, and watch this, why it's not just entertainment. It would be an example. So think about this idea, and then it's the commercial. I got my slides in the wrong order. Or I forgot which order they were in. Okay, Ocean's 11. Who's seen this movie? All right, there we go. This movie is designed in a way that without thinking about it, who do you start cheering for? The criminals, right? You're not even aware of it, but by the end of the movie, you're like, come on, you can do it, you can do it, you can rob them, and then they do it, and you're like, yes! You're like, go criminals! At the same time, most of you would be like, I think criminals are bad. It's wrong to steal things. So notice how if you're not thinking and aware, you can start cheering for the bad guys. Now, I think this is a good movie. I've seen it too. And that's where I think the line approach is slightly different. I'm not saying don't watch it necessarily. I think there are some things that we should not watch. But when your mind is turned on, then you don't fall for these lies and these ideas that sometimes they're presenting. Here's the commercial.
We count likes, calories, hours, minutes, points and scores, friends and follows. We measure our weight and tally our steps. Every day we stare at screens, press buttons, and count. But we don't count what really counts. Our moments together. We'll never know how many chances we'll get to gather by the ocean under a blue sky. We'll make the best of a rainy day. How many chances will we have to dance, or forgive, or break the awkward silence with a joke? How many opportunities will there be for us to pack our bags and embark on an adventure? Sometimes we forget that the things that count the most are those that can't be counted. That's why Verbo believes in the immeasurable value of vacations, together, in giving people unique spaces to share moments with each other, anywhere in the world. We might get caught up in the everyday sometimes. We might keep on counting, but we'll always turn back to what matters. The time we have to just be together.
Think about the ideas presented in that. Are they true? Is that filled with true ideas? That sometimes the things that truly count can't be counted? Is it true that sometimes we lose out on beautiful relationships because we're too busy counting things that don't really matter? Is it true that sometimes we got to dinner with people and we sit there and stare at our phone the whole time rather than engaging in relationships that are truly lasting? My wife and I went to dinner last night, and I watched this happen. As we're sitting there feeding Lennox and eating, there's a table right behind us where two ladies sat down, and both of them just stare at their phones the entire time, but they're waiting for their food. Like, we think we're together with people, but we're not together. Sherry Turkle, a sociologist, I believe, wrote a book called Alone Together. Yeah, we're together, we're next to each other, but really we're alone. We're in our own little world. There's a lot of truth in here. It's also done in a beautiful way where it captivates you and then makes you want to go on a vacation, right? You want to, right? They're smart. The ideas that they're presenting are getting you to do something. See, that's the idea. It's not just entertainment. Commercials are made and they get you to do something. They get you to remember something. You can know this if you just look at some of the popular companies like Nike, and you can go over all their, slogans. Nike, just do it, right? Disney, the happiest place on earth. And we can say a lot of these. We can sing a lot of our favorite songs. We can quote a lot of our favorite movies because it sinks in. The ideas matter. Here's the second lie of our culture, is that it's neutral. The the medium is neutral. It doesn't have an effect on me, and that's not true. As this commercial, I think, also showed, it's not like a car where you have drive, reverse, and neutral, and you can sit there and your life doesn't change. With entertainment, with our screens, they're always taking us in a direction, for good or for bad. It's taking us away from something. Now, that's not to say never get on your phone. But if I'm sitting on my phone doing something, it's taking me away from time with my family. So now is that thing worth doing? Is that something I need to do? Or is it possible I'm counting things and doing things that's taking me away from time with my wife and son? That's something that's way more valuable that we get sucked into. It's not neutral. Now, what I want to kind of look at here with us together is when we take amusement and move it when we take entertainment and move it towards amusement, right? If we are using entertainment as amusement, we're flipping off our brain, we're not thinking about life, and we're simply just consuming, this has an effect on us, right? And studies have been done to show different effects, and I want to look at some of these. Number one is amusement, right? Entertainment without thinking enslaves our affections, where they find that those who are addicted to entertainment and amusement, it turns them from being a person of companionship to defiance, from people of respect to disrespect, from people that are more helpful to those that are more aggressive, and from those that are more other-centered to those that become more self-centered. I remember talking to a youth group and giving this talk, and there was a mother and son there listening, and both the son and the mother recognized absolutely that's true. This is his sign of when he knows he's been playing too many video games. Is when mom says, "Can you take out the trash?" And instead of saying, "Of course, mom," he goes, "No, what are you talking about? I'm busy playing. Get someone else to do it." And it becomes an aggressive response, becomes self-centered, let me do what I want to do. And this is true of all addictions, right? When someone tries to take a thing that we're addicted to away, we're not often happy about that. If you truly love entertainment and are using it to inspire you and to think through, that's okay. But when we become addicted, it starts to enslave our affections and begins to change us in negative ways. Another thing that amusement does is it makes us restless. Breaking news all the time. This is worthy of your time. You have to see this, you have to see that, and if you don't, you're going to miss out. And our phones buzz and buzz and buzz and buzz and buzz in our pockets. Let me give you one practical step here at the beginning. There'll be some practical steps at the end, but one practical step at the beginning. What I did a few years back is I turned off all notifications on my phone except for texting and email. I need email for work, and if someone texts me. I don't want my phone buzzing in my pocket every 2 minutes. Someone liked a picture. Someone liked a picture. I don't need to know that right now. Technology has been created for us to use, for us to have control of. But sometimes our phones are actually controlling us. They sit in our pockets saying, check me, check me, check me, check me, check me, check me. There's an active shooter at my school. Actually, it was right next to our school, so we went on lockdown this last school year. And I collect all my students' phones because sometimes we don't have the willpower to not look when they're buzzing all the time. So I collect all my students' phones at every class. At the end of the class, we had a 45-minute lockdown. We were in the class, and I could just hear my students' phones buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. There were some students, I think it was 200 notifications on their phones after a 45-minute lockdown. Can you imagine that phone in your student's pocket buzzing 200 times an hour? Check me, check me. That makes us restless. There's always something you got to watch. You got to watch that funny cat video. Or you have to check that thing even though you're with someone. I remember giving this presentation to a group of students once, one of my classes, and one of the girls in my class said, one thing that this can do to us is it makes us believe that everyone is in our life to entertain us, Where if I sit down to lunch with you or to coffee with you and you're not entertaining enough, guess what we do? Take out our phone. She even admitted, she goes, it's your job to entertain me. If I'm not entertained, then I'll find something else that will. What does that do to human value? What does that do to the people that we're talking to and how we see them? You're my entertainment, not you're a valuable human being created in the image of God that I'm called to love. It makes us restless. There's always something I'm missing. That's why when you detach from your phones, there's a term, FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, what am I missing? What am I missing? It's okay, you'll survive. People have for a long time without them. Another thing that amusement can do to us is it can destroy our contentment, just being alone in the quiet. You know, see, one of the spiritual disciplines is solitude and silence, just getting away from the busyness of life and being in silence. But often for us, when we sit in silence, it's like, oh, we freak out because we need some sort of input. Our brains have rewired themselves to where we need something. We play music in the background when doing homework or work because we can't just sit there in quiet. We need something. There's a great song, again, by a non-Christian band that I think is filled with truth on this idea of amusement destroys our contentment. It's by 21 Pilots. Anyone 21 Pilot fans in the room? Like one, okay. So I'm going to introduce you all to this band. Here's what I love about this band is that most of their songs have really deep lyrics that even though, again, they're not Christian, they reflect true principles. True principle? Yeah, I said that right. It sounded weird when I said it. Let me play a section of this song. The song is titled Car Radio, and you'll see here in the lyrics, the premise of the song is this. His radio got stolen, and so when he's driving around in his car, he didn't have a radio. He didn't have music to keep him busy, and he had to sit there in silence. Listen to his reflection in this time of driving around in his car, sitting in silence. Here you go.
I ponder of something great. My lungs will fill and then deflate. They fill with fire, exhale desire. I know it's dire, my time today. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought. Cause somebody stole my car radio and now I just sit in silence. Sometimes quiet is violent. I find it hard to hide it. My pride is no longer inside. It's on my sleeve, my skin will scream, reminding me of who I killed inside my dream. I hate this car that I'm driving. There's no hiding for me. I'm forced to deal with what I feel. There is no distraction to mask what is real. I could pull the steering wheel. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought. Cause somebody stole my car radio and now I just sit in silence. Ponder of something terrifying, cause this time there's no sound to hide behind. To find over the course of our human existence, one thing consists of consistence, and it's that we're all battling fear. Oh dear, I don't know if we know why we're here. Oh my, too deep, please stop thinking. I liked it better when my car had sound. There are things we can do, but from the things that work there are only two, and from the two that we choose to do, peace will win and fear will lose. There's faith and there's sleep. We need to pick one, please, because faith is to be awake, and to be awake is for us to think, and for us to think is to be alive. And I will try with every rhyme to come across like I am dying to let you know you need to try to think. I have these thoughts so often I ought to replace that slot with what I once bought. Cause somebody stole my car radio and now I just sit in silence.
All right. Again, think about the truth filled here. I think this would qualify as what you could call a good song. Right, we talked about beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's objective good and there's objective bad. Perception is what changes. Maybe you don't like the song, right? Your perception of beauty, it's like, okay, I don't prefer this style, but it still may be good. Think about the truth that is here. Think about some of these lyrics. Is it true that sometimes quiet is violence? We can't hide from it. Is it true that there's no hiding from us? Is it true that sometimes we use entertainment to distract us from the real problems in life? Is it true that sometimes we throw in our headphones and walk around because we don't have to deal with what we feel? Right? Is it true that sometimes rather than using entertainment to cause us to think deeper about life, we're using it to distract us from life? I forget who said it, but someone said the way you know the difference between a good book and a bad book is good book draws you deeper into life and a bad book distracts you from it. I think there's some truth there to that. Right? Think about some of these other things that he says. He's forced to deal with what he feels there in that line right there. I liked it better when my car had sound. He goes, I have to start thinking about these things. I'm battling my fear. I'm too deep. Please stop thinking, right? Sometimes when we are in silence, we have to think. Sometimes we don't like what we think. But as he says here, I love this line. Faith is to be awake. For us to be awake is for us to think. And for us to think is to be alive. See, I think there's a lot of people, like if we look at like those who are truly successful in the world, they think and innovate and come up with new ideas and new things. Sometimes we're so distracting ourselves to where we never stop and think that we just kind of go along with what we're supposed to do. We're not out there thinking and being innovative of how can I use what God has given me in a different way. Lastly, I think not only does it destroy our contentment, but it also makes us angry. Tons of studies have been done on this. The more time people spend on like Twitter and social media, the more angry they are at the end. Often and the more depressed as well, because we only see the good things of people's life, right? Everyone has it better than us. Everyone is always having fun. Everyone's always going on vacation. Why not I? Well, guess what? They're just not posting the bad things of their life. You only see the good. You see the highlights and assume that everyone else is living. And so students and studies have been done where students have finding more depressed and more fearful and more angry the more time they spend on social media. And when you take a student's phone away, after a week or so, they start finding more joy and happiness in life. It's amazing how our phones have done this. If you haven't watched it, there's a great documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Right, but there's a spike in like teen suicide rates and teen depression, and it happened right at the time when the iPhone came out. There's this correlation between the time we spend on social media and how connected we are, feeling like we have to stay that we're not built for. We're not made to know of every single thing evil that happens in this world. We don't have the shoulders to bear that. Sometimes we have to take that step away from it. So what do we do? Some practical application. As we've been talking about, I think the first one is we need to be people who desire to pursue truth, goodness, and beauty. That we want to consume the entertainment that both is speaking truth, that is good, that's done well, and is beautiful. And we need to be aware and be able to recognize when it's not done that way. So let me give you another movie. I'm not going to show a clip, but who has seen the movie The Prestige in this room? Yeah, I see quite a few hands. Good movie? This is an incredible movie. Again, not Christian. I would highly suggest this movie, and you will see, my goodness, I don't want to give it away, but the things that say is true in this movie are absolutely true of life. One like revenge will just consume you. It is done in a beautiful way. The plot twist, the things that happen you won't see coming. And what it says is good about life is actually good. What it says is bad about life is actually bad. It's a great movie to reflect and has these truth, goodness, and beauty built in, although, yes, not Christian. Let me give you one movie clip. We're going to watch a movie clip. And I want you to think about, again, this idea that we've been focusing on of what does this clip say is true, what is it saying is good, and what is it done, how is it done beautifully. Here you go. Do we need to pass out any tissues? What is this saying is true? Let's get a little bit of interaction here. What is this saying is true? Love? Okay. Yeah, love is a good thing. Broken world? Yeah. Bad things happen in life. That's true. There's life and death. Absolutely true. Time is limited. Yeah. You have to make decisions and do things because you don't have all the time in the world. Life is finite. Yeah, it ends at times. Right? There are difficult parts of life, as this showed. Flat tires and trees falling over, miscarriages. Is that true? Absolutely. There are good things in life. Right? There's happiness and joy in spending time together. Is that true? Yeah. What does it say is good? One thing it says is good is love, as we talked about. Relationships are good. Lifelong marriage is a good thing, right? Most of us, that's what we desire. No one goes into marriage like, I hope I get married and after a year everything falls apart and we get divorced. That would be wonderful. No, lifelong marriage is a good thing. God has created it that way. And this is done beautifully, right? We're all captivated. There's no bombs, there's no explosions, there's no magic tricks, there's not even any words. Yet we're like, oh, right? It just captivates us, makes us think deeper about life, right? This is just the introduction to the movie Up. And so the question here that we're asking is are we people that desire truth, goodness, and beauty? See, here's the thing, is there's a difference between the content and the form. The form is how something is packaged. The form is how it is wrapped. The content is what's inside. And we have to be careful not to be tricked by the form and fall for bad contents. Just because something looks tasty, but it's filled with poison or something, you don't eat it. We have to recognize not just how something is wrapped is what's most important, but what is the contents inside. Again, this is now the difficult part of, like, we often just tell students and young people, like, don't have bad stuff, stay away from the bad stuff. And it's like, well, why? And it's trying to figure out, how do we train young people to be people that actually desire truth, goodness, and beauty? And that's the second point, is that we need to learn discernment. We need to learn discernment, where we become people who can actually discern between right and wrong, truth and lies. Sometimes that's difficult, where something is filled with a lie and we think it's something that's truth and we like it. And to do this, we have to first be grounded in Scripture. Jesus is the truth, right? God is truth. God is good. God is beautiful. We ground ourselves in a knowledge of who He is, and it helps us to learn discernment, to be able to spot lies, to spot badness. As we learn discernment, we then start to discern the worldviews that are involved in movies. See, worldviews are always in movies. They're giving ideas. There's some fun clips you can watch here, but we just don't have the time to do so. But here would be, as we talked about before, here's one show that has worldviews involved, and we talked about this. Is this the first night, Friday night? I think so. Right? Stranger Things presents a secular worldview. That's the worldview behind Stranger Things, popular TV show. Right? Whatever seems spiritual in the world is not spiritual. There's no spiritual world. It's just another physical reality, the upside down. Who has the answers to all of life? Your science teacher, not the pastor. Because science studies the natural world, and everything that's knowable can be found in science. In fact, all religious references have been taken out of the movie completely. And so we need to be able to see the worldview involved. Doctor Strange is a great worldview movie. I show that to my students in my worldview class. Because Doctor Strange is a materialist. He believes the only material world exists. If you remember from the first movie, he goes to see that lady and she whacks his astral form out of his physical form. And he comes back and he's like, what was in the tea? Right? He's assuming there's some natural explanation for it. And what she's trying to show him is your mind is limited. Well, you think that only the physical world exists, but there's this world beyond what you can test and see with your eyes. It's kind of a new age worldview presented, and then it ends with actually a very beautiful Christian theme. And I think what's important is, again, not just to draw a line and say anything with the other worldview necessarily stay away from, but when we recognize the worldview behind it, Dr. Strange talks about that our thoughts shape reality. Well, that's not true. And if you can just spot something as not true, then you don't fall for that lie. It says, who are you in this vast multiverse? Well, multiverse theory is used to try to disprove God and creation. We just live in this multiverse. No, that's not true. There's no evidence for this. So I think that when we learn discernment, we can spot this. We may decide for ourselves, this is not something I want to watch. Or we may say, look, I maybe can watch this, but I'm not going to fall for the lies because I have my mind turned on. I'm not going to be held captive to something and fall for something because I can spot the lies, and therefore I don't fall captive to it. One way that we can also do that and spot the lies is by asking questions. So questions like, how are the characters portrayed? Who are the good guys? Who are the villains? Are good guys actually good guys? Are the villains actually villains? How does it talk about religion? Does it make any religious references? What are the values that are promoted? Is it promoting a life of drunkenness and that the purpose and goal of life is just to become rich and wealthy and that will satisfy you? Or does it speak some truth and some values, like marriage is a valuable thing and love and relationships are beautiful? And so you might watch something that promotes values that are against what you believe. And you go, okay, I don't want to watch this anymore because I don't believe this. I don't hold to this. Lastly, we need to learn to take a break. Sometimes have to put the phone down, turn off the TV, and take a break. There are practical steps to this. One is to have screen-free times in the house. We're at mealtime, dinner, no phones. We're actually going to talk as a family and eat around the table. Maybe it's once a week and you drive to church in the car. We're not going to listen to music. We're going to turn off the radio and we're just going to talk to each other. Maybe it's a weekend away, right? Maybe it's screen-free time in the zone. Maybe it's a screen-free area of the house, like don't take phones in your bedroom. Often this is true of students, where we stay up late looking at our phone. Often it's inappropriate stuff that we look at late at night. One way to solve that, don't have a screen in your bedroom. Take it out. All phones get plugged in the kitchen, something like that. There are practical steps that we can do to say, look, if I'm becoming addicted to this, if it's turning into amusement, where I'm just soaking and soaking and soaking, I just need to separate and take a break, be able to rest, relax a little bit, get a little bit of my contentment back, and be able to just sit in silence and think deeply about life. Entertainment is not bad. Movies and music are not bad, but they definitely can become things for us that shape us if we're not careful. And so Christian worldview speaks into this, not only in what we consume, but also in what we create. We have the ability to create things that are true, good, and beautiful. In a very general sense, you could say sometimes Christians just focus on what's true. As long as it has like the gospel or Jesus in it, we're like, that's amazing, but it's actually very poorly done. And then in like Hollywood, it's like, does it make money and does it captivate people? Who cares if what it's saying is actually true? Right? We should be the best at being able to reconcile these things and say we're going to create things that are true, but also things that are good and beautiful, that captivate people and make them think deeper about life. So with that, I think we have just a couple minutes. If we have want to do kind of a final last Q&A, and again, this is not your last chance to ask questions. If you want to connect, there's all the social medias. Subscribe on YouTube, check out the channel, and then you can always send me questions, and I'd love to continue to interact. But any kind of final questions as we finish up with this summer conference together? Again, thank you for having me. It has been such a blessing to be here with you guys. So anything on today or the conference in general? Satisfied all your questions, huh? Look, I always know the first question is always the hardest. So we'll just skip the first, and who wants to go second? Who has the second question? See, it works every time. There you go. Yes. Right. Right. That's a really good question. And again, I think it's a little bit what we talked about before in one of the other sessions, where it's number one is it supported by evidence? And is this something that is a subjective relative thing, where are they just giving their preference? Or are they talking about external reality? Is there something testable about this? Is there something provable about this that we can actually go discover to figure out what they're saying is true or not? Right? So if I just said, I think chocolate ice cream is disgusting, well, there's nothing that can be tested to know if that's a true fact or if that's just my opinion. So you go, okay, you can't test that. He's just giving us his opinion. Right? But if I'm out there saying something like it's raining outside, that's not an opinion. I'm now talking about a fact. Could be false, could be true. Right? So that's a simple sense. But I think one thing that we have to recognize too is that I think we're learning as a society this idea that like we often say, well, like science says. And then we like hold science as this like arbiter of truth. And what we have to recognize is science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. It's the people do. And scientists have worldviews. Scientists have bias and things. And so what we have to do is we have to get back to what is the data that people are drawing from. Science gives us data. That data does lead to a certain conclusion. And we have to recognize that people interpret data in different ways. And so we have to be careful ourselves, as well as from the people that we're listening to, is are they allowing their bias to reinterpret the data and switch things or ignore pieces, right? That happens often. Are we ignoring any evidence? Are we picking and choosing the things that we like and ignoring this whole stuff over here? Like we pick the problem of evil and we're like, yay, that's good. It shows God doesn't exist. And we ignore all the arguments in favor of God's existence, right? And so those are some steps I think we do is recognize it's not just what this one person says. What is the data that they're drawing from? And then are they actually including all the available data or getting a good sampling and not just picking and choosing and ignoring things they don't like? And then are they actually accurately representing it? Or are they kind of twisting it for their own narrative? And so I think that's just important. And I think that's one thing that kind of COVID has done is, right, there's always like, the science says this. No, the science says this. And the science, it's like, the science doesn't say anything. We have data, and we have to be able to interpret it. So I don't know if that helps, but those are some things of again, having our minds on and being able to test and discern. Those are such important things to learn. I think the more we do it then the easier it becomes, right? And the same thing with this. The more we desire goodness, we develop that taste for goodness. We have a habit for goodness. And we build it. It's hard at first. So I don't know if that helps. Those would be a couple thoughts that come to mind. Anybody else? Other thoughts? Other questions? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a shortcut. There is, I think, but we also have to be careful of shortcuts, right? And so I think that a shortcut can be find people that are involved in those things at a deeper sense, that you trust, that have been reliable, and so then there's some trust in that, right? So I'm not a historian or whatever. I'm not a scientist, but I know Christian scientists personally who I think do a very good job. And so when I go to them and they give me information on some new scientific discovery, I don't have the time, nor do I even understand the language that's used to describe this discovery, but they do. They know how to read it, understand it, and then translate it and explain it to me. And so because I found people that I trust, I do this. Now at the same time, every now and then, right, I'm comparing what they say to someone else. Well, here's someone who takes a different view than them. What are the reasons for their view? And I every now and then kind of want to check again because I don't want to just turn off my brain and say, I just trust whatever you say. But I would say that is a shortcut in finding people who are experts and scholars and deeper into issues than we can ever be, that are trustworthy, reliable people that can speak into it for us. So, yeah. I thought I saw a hand pop up over here at the same time. No? You sure there wasn't a hand? One of you wants to put their hand up, it doesn't? All right. You good? All right, well, thank you again. Let me close this in a word of prayer. God, again, we're just so grateful for you, the beautiful, good creator that you are. God, I pray that as we finish up this conference, God, I pray that you would just equip these people with discernment, with knowledge and wisdom to be able to face this cultural moment. Well, God, we're fully aware that we are surrounded by ideas, false ideas and true ideas. And I pray that you would give us discernment. I pray that we would develop the capacity to discern between those things. God, that ultimately you would give us a heart for good. That we would be people like as Philippians 4 says, that desire that which is true, good, lovely, beautiful, admirable. Things that are excellent and praiseworthy. God, I pray that we would be people that are also creating beauty. That are spreading the truth, not lies. God, that are people that are doing this in a good way and not a bad way, that are caring for people. I pray that you continue to equip us, engage our minds, help us think well, and engage the culture well, because we know that this is a lost and broken culture that desperately, desperately needs you. So I pray that you continue to use us for your glory, for your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.